Sinterklaas is back in the country, so let's paint our face black for this holiday, just for fun. And if you already have a black skin, you make it even blacker. With the arrival of Sinterklaas, the time of demonstrations and riots has come again, unfortunately. So let's talk about a Dutch holiday tradition called Sinterklaas, and specifically a character associated with it named Zwarte Piet, or Black Pete. In recent years, the character has become the center of an intense debate, with some people arguing that it represents a racial stereotype, while others see it as a cherished part of Dutch culture. We're here to break down both sides of this issue to understand what's going on. First, let's talk about Sinterklaas. Sinterklaas is a beloved Dutch holiday celebrated on December 5th, similar to Christmas in its spirit of giving. The holiday is named after St. Nicholas, a 4th century saint who was known for his kindness and generosity. According to Dutch tradition, Sinterklaas arrives from Spain by steamboat each November, along with his helpers, called Zwarte Piet, to bring gifts and sweets for children. Children place their shoes by the fireplace or door, and if they've been good, Sinterklaas and his helpers leave candy or small gifts overnight. One happy holiday, right? Sinterklaas is primarily celebrated in the Netherlands and Belgium, but variations of the tradition can also be found in parts of Germany, Luxembourg, and even former Dutch colonies like Suriname and the Dutch Caribbean. The controversy surrounding Zwarte Piet, however, is most prominent in the Netherlands, where it has sparked nationwide debates. In Belgium, the discussion exists, but is generally less heated. Internationally, in countries like the United States and the United Kingdom, Zwarte Piet is often viewed as a form of racism due to its use of blackface and its colonial-era associations. These perspectives have amplified global criticism and put pressure on the Netherlands to modernize or replace the character. Zwarte Piet, or Black Pete, is Sinterklaas's helper and is often dressed in Renaissance-style clothing with black face paint, red lips, and an Afro-style wig. Traditionally, Zwarte Piet is portrayed as a jolly character who helps Sinterklaas by delivering presents to children, climbing through chimneys, and sometimes playing light-hearted tricks. The origins of Black Pete are debated, but many sources suggest he first appeared as a black servant or Moorish character in 19th century depictions of the story. In recent years, many people in the Netherlands and abroad have raised concerns that Black Pete's portrayal is racially insensitive or even outright racist. Critics argue that the blackface makeup, exaggerated features, and servant-like role evoke offensive racial stereotypes of black people, associating the character with a painful colonial past. As a result, activists and anti-racism groups have called for changes to how Black Pete is portrayed, arguing that the character's traditional appearance is outdated and harmful, especially in a modern, multicultural society. This movement has gained traction, especially in urban areas, and has led to changes in how Pete is portrayed in some regions. Today, a growing number of places use Roetveeg Piet, or soot-smudged Pete, where the character has smudges of soot rather than full blackface, to represent the dirt from chimneys. Despite the shift to Roetveeg Piet, or soot-smudged Pete, in many places, and the abandonment of the name Black Pete, some people continue to protest against the current version of Pete. For these activists, the issue is not just about appearance, but about the deeper symbolism and social impact of the tradition. They argue that even with soot smudges, there is still an association with the past and the hierarchical relationship between Sinterklaas and Pete, which can continue to reinforce underlying racial stereotypes. Some believe that the soot-smudged version is only a compromise, and that Pete should be entirely reimagined or replaced with a more inclusive figure. Protesters emphasize that merely modifying the tradition is not enough. They call for greater awareness and acknowledgement of the impact of racial stereotypes in cultural traditions, especially for children who grow up with these stories. On the other hand, there are many people in the Netherlands who feel very attached to the tradition of Black Pete and don't see the character as racist. They view Piet as a fun, joyful character who's part of their cultural heritage. For them, Black Pete isn't associated with race or colonial history, but is simply a tradition they grew up with. They argue that changing Pete's appearance takes away from the authenticity of the holiday, and say that Pete's blackface can be explained as soot from chimneys, not as a racial marker. Some also feel that the pressure to change Black Pete comes from outside influences, particularly from those unfamiliar with Dutch traditions, which can lead to feelings of cultural imposition. For these supporters, the push for change feels like a loss of cultural identity and the end of a tradition that has brought joy to children for generations. The United Nations has spoken out about the Black Pete tradition as part of its broader mission to address issues of racial discrimination and human rights. In 2013, the United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent expressed concerns that the character of Black Pete perpetuates negative stereotypes about black people, which can contribute to discrimination and reinforce racial biases. According to the United Nations, the portrayal of Black Pete, particularly with blackface makeup, exaggerated features, and servant-like behavior, can be deeply offensive to people of African descent, regardless of the local tradition and historical context. The United Nations involvement sparked widespread debate in the Netherlands, bringing international attention to the issue and encouraging the country to reflect on the role of racial representation in cultural traditions. For the United Nations, addressing Black Pete aligns with its commitment to promoting inclusivity, dignity, and respect for all communities around the world. This debate around Black Pete has divided public opinion in the Netherlands. Over the past decade, the country has seen protests, debates, and even legal battles over the character. Some towns and cities have adapted the character's appearance, while others have kept the traditional portrayal. For some, these changes are a positive step toward inclusivity and respect for all. For others, it feels like the loss of an important tradition. Now there is an activist group in the Netherlands called Kick Out Zwarte Piet that campaigns for the elimination of Black Pete, arguing that the character perpetuates racial stereotypes and exclusion. They advocate for an inclusive and racism-free celebration of Sinterklaas, focusing on educating the public about the harmful impact of stereotypes and colonial imagery. While their efforts have led to significant changes, such as the adoption of soot-smudged Pete in many places, not everyone supports their cause. Critics of Kick Out Zwarte Piet often feel that the group is needlessly politicizing a beloved children's holiday. In some cases, Sinterklaas parades have been delayed, altered, or even cancelled due to safety concerns or clashes between protesters and supporters. Opponents argue that this behavior takes the joy out of what is meant to be a festive occasion for children, deepening divisions rather than fostering dialogue. These opponents argue that the tradition has already evolved, and that the constant protests are draining the joy from what is supposed to be a festive and innocent celebration. This clash has made Sinterklaas a battleground for cultural identity and social change. Ultimately, the conversation around Black Pete reflects a broader, ongoing discussion about race, tradition, and inclusivity in the Netherlands and beyond. It's a complex issue with strong feelings on both sides, and finding a balance that respects cultural traditions while being sensitive to modern concerns is no easy task.